Thanks guys for coming back to my channel. I'm Dr. Maggie Lou and today I am joined with Dr. Claudia Antolini, and she's an astrophysicist and a Sci-Commer and all sorts of things, and today we're going to have a long chat with her about her career path, because you guys seem to love those kind of videos, and like kind of her experience as a astrophysicist turned Sci-Commer and all of that. So thank you, Claudia. So to start, how about you introduce yourself? Let the audience know who you are.
I'm Claudia. I was born in Italy, then got my undergrad and master's and PhD there, then started going around the world in different places. I've lived in the UK and I still live here now, but first I lived in the UK, then I went away, and now I'm back.
You live in Wales, right?
Yes, right now I'm based in Wales. But before coming back to the UK, I've lived in Germany, I've lived in China, I've lived in Austria. Then
Wow.
I got my first job, full-time job in science communication in Cambridge. So I moved to the UK again in 2017. So this is my, let's say, third UK anniversary somehow.
Wow, happy anniversary.
Thanks. I got my bachelor's degree in physics and then master's in astrophysics, then a PhD again in astronomy. But with that, I also have a number of other passions, such as, for example, I love acting very much. I sing a lot, like people complain sometimes. But
you have that amazing Twitter video of the rocket that you made and singing. Yeah. That's a brilliant video. If people haven't seen that, I'm going to link it down below, so check it out.
Yeah, there was around a year ago, I was celebrating some Twitter milestone, so I decided, okay, because I don't have a reputation anyway, I'm just gonna make a fool of myself and sing with a Lego rock, like holding a Lego rocket in a flight suit, just to show that I'm a bit of a jazzy weirdo or something. And then it became really successful, but the truth behind that video is that I've done like 3 takes. I just built out without rehearsing too much or anything. I was like, okay, like this is just for fun. No one's gonna see it anyway. And now when people meet me in real life, they say, "Oh yeah, you're the one that sings." I'm like, "Oh my god, seen it! Oh my god!" And the other thing that really does it for me in this sense is cooking and baking. I really, really enjoy doing it. I do it mostly for my friends. I also do it for myself, but it's more like I find it more enjoyable when I can share with someone else, or I'm more motivated if it's at least 2 servings. Because if it's just for me, I'm like, I'm not going to go all out and just do many different preparations, because then also I'm wash all those dishes later. Like, maybe to do it just for myself. Also, I'm a bit of a natural feeder. And then
that's because you're Italian.
Maybe, but I just feel like it's a personality trait as well, because I know plenty of people from Italy that are not really the same as me. So yeah, well, I mean, Italy clearly has a very strong food culture. I'm not saying no to that, but sometimes I do go the extra mile just because I feel like it. So I don't think that's necessarily because of where I was born.
So let's go back to your attraction to space. You said you've always been attracted to space, and everyone who's an astronomer always gets asked oh, what got you interested in space? Was there one particular moment in time? Because for me, I don't find a particular moment in time. I think it was just I've always wanted to do science.
When I was young, like when I was 5, 6 years old, I wanted to be either a hairdresser or a princess. And like looking at myself now, I'm not sure I fit in that particular area of femininity. Nothing wrong if people do, but it's just not my personality.
Yeah.
So I probably growing up, I was a lot frillier than I am now, and now I'm like, yeah, I don't care. I'm just not in that mood anymore, I suppose. I was definitely a very, very curious kid. I asked way too many questions. I was too smart for my own good. I read all the time, everything I could lay my hands
Were
on.
you one of those kids that just like consistently asked why to everything? Because I was one of those kids.
Yeah, and also I grew up and I didn't have many kids around me because I was an only child growing
Okay.
up. Then I have a younger sister, but she's quite a lot younger than me.
Yeah.
She's 8 years younger. So I, growing up in like those very early years, I didn't have many other peers of my age because we moved around also quite a lot. So I would spend most of my time with adults. So my, let's say my thought process was, I would play, of course, like kids do, but I thought about things a lot. I was very observant of things. I feel like I see myself back then, and that's how I remember myself. If that makes sense. But then, growing up, I found out about this passion I had for singing and acting and performing, and like to be entirely honest with you, even during my early years of high school, I thought I was going to be an actress. Like that's what I wanted to do. I was determined that I was going to audition for this very important theatre school in Rome. And if I don't get in this year, I'll just train one more year and try again the year after. Like I was set, and that was me when I was 14, 15 years old. So to me, that was it. That's what I was going to try and be. And then I I felt at the same time I did like science. I I was a big nerd. Like maybe it doesn't come across now that much, even though I know it does. I was a huge nerd, and I did enjoy studying. Like I quite enjoy studying a lot of different subjects as well. And I was one of those kids that everyone hates. That like I would always know the answer to any question. So you can imagine my teenage years were just great for that. And kids can be mean, and I had a lot of that growing up. Like I was very much of an outcast. People didn't like me very much. So that together with like being quite smart and capable and just excelling, people didn't like that too much. My nerdy side came through with me really, really liking to study and learn about many things, but some people do it because they want good marks, and that's fine, I suppose. My aim was to just do it for learning. I wasn't trying to impress my peers. I wasn't trying too much to impress my parents. I was just trying to do it because I loved learning. That was my main interest. And then the thing I really looked forward to studying was to begin to study chemistry because for my for how my education went, that was going to be the first sort of hardcore science subject that I was going to encounter in my high school years. And I remember I was really, really, really looking forward to studying chemistry because I thought, oh, that's going to be so cool. And I did love it. And then I started studying physics, and I was like, oh my God, I like this even more. What am I going to do? So I was at the end of my fourth year, and I was working my first job. I was a coach in a summer camp, and after the first week of the 2 week summer camp, they laid me off from one of the jobs I was doing that day. And also, it was around my birthday that they laid me off, so it was extremely yeah, it was my
That sucks.
birthday.
What?
And yes, and the day before that, I think it was the day before, they told me, oh, this and this happened, and da da da, and I felt so sad. I felt so terribly devastated. I was quite young, and it was my first time actually working for money. So it, I was very, I wasn't happy, let's say. And a family friend was there with me, and for some reason, because I'm not sure if she knew that I already had this strong passion for physics at the time. I can't remember that. But for some reason, she gave me an article from the newspaper about Cassini, Saturn. This was, to do some maths now, this was 2004. So some time ago, just like showing my age. I'm not ashamed of who I am. But this was some time ago now. Some moons have gone. So I remember reading this thing about Saturn, and I hope so much. I wish so much I had kept it. I don't know exactly what piece of news it was anymore, but I know it was about Cassini and Saturn. I'm quite sure of that. And I remember reading that. I felt just a sense of fulfillment. It just felt right. And even though I was incredibly upset because I was away from my family, day before my birthday, had just been laid off with an excuse, like I had every reason to be upset. I read this 25 lines about a piece of metal floating around in space, thousands and thousands of kilometers away. And I was just like happy. And I'm like, okay, if something has the power of making me this happy, this content, like just feeling like everything is fine, and that's what I should do. I should go for it.
Yeah. So what did you do your undergrad in? Let's start with that.
My undergrad was in physics.
Yeah, straight physics.
Yeah, I was like going for it. There were other undergrads in like more focused on astronomy as well, but I thought I'm going to try and leave my options slightly more open. Like let's not fool anyone. I knew since day one I was going to do astronomy, but I also felt like I want to see other things in the field. So I went more for a physics bachelor's degree. But then as soon as I could choose exams, I was like, yeah, astronomy.
Yeah.
Of course it is. And then during my bachelor's, I knew I wanted to study cosmology as well. So I just felt these revelations coming through. And as much as I tried, like try to stay sensible, quote inverted quotes, because I'm not really the epitome of sensible person, I don't think. But I just felt this strong thing, okay, this is what I want to do, but always saying, okay, I'm going to still have as wide as a foundation as I can.
Right.
So that if I see that something else comes up, I still have other things to sustain me, sort of.
Yeah.
So that's what I went for. So I finished my undergrad in 2008.
And did you do your master's on Cassini? Did you go back to Cassini?
No, actually, I didn't. Again, this is one of those swings and roundabouts of life. I've done my master's in astrophysics. And again, I knew like going to do a thesis in cosmology. At the time, Planck was all the rage. So I was like, yes, I'm going to be a CMB person. I want to study the early universe. I'm going to do
What's
that.
CMB for those who don't know what CMB is?
Oh, yes. The CMB is a cosmic microwave background radiation, which is the oldest light you can see in the universe. So after the Big Bang, when the universe was very, very young, it was also extremely hot. And it was so hot, it was like a bowl of thick soup. You can't see through soup, right? Because it's very thick, but also it's very, very hot. So that temperature means that the rays of light can't exactly go through. And as soon as the soup cools down and the universe has expanded, it becomes more and more rarefied and colder. So now the rays of light can finally travel through. And the cosmic microwave background radiation is exactly that. It's the picture of the time freeze frame of when the soup becomes just exactly cold enough for light to travel through it for the first time. And then the universe becomes super dark for
Brilliant
many, many
explanation.
billion years until the first stars are born. So it's this transition between super hot, super thick, impossible to see through universe. So some might say, not me, but some might say super cold, super boring, nothing that you can see is really happening. But then super cool things with dark matter start to happen.
Right.
Always like
That's a really good explanation. Yeah. So your PhD was on the CMB then, right?
Yeah, so my master's has quite an interesting story because, again, I wanted to be this Planck CMB person, but
Planck is an
that,
ESA telescope, by the way, those
yes,
that don't
Planck
know, to
is an
measure.
ESA telescope that is a mission that is now over. So all the data are public, has done some quite interesting things, has measured the polarized part of the CMB light. Polarization is what lets you actually see a 3D movie. Those funny dark glasses that they give you when you go and see a 3D movie work as polarized filters. So they just select a part of light that is excited in a certain direction. We were able to measure polarized light from when the universe was only 380,000 years old, which seems like a lot of time, but when you think that the universe is actually 14 billion years old, it's like if I showed you a picture of myself when I was only half hour old after I was born,
Yeah,
proportionally.
yeah,
So it's quite young, really.
right.
So this was this impressive result. But then a friend of mine was applying for a program in a quite impressive PhD school in Italy. So she said, "Oh, you know what? I've looked at them, and they also have an astrophysics PhD program. So, you know, why don't you also apply, and we can just go and do the exam together in different branches of physics?" And I was like, "Okay, well, sure, I guess." It's March. I still have almost a year's worth of exams to do. I don't think they'll take me, but whatever, I guess. There was a selection with your CV and titles, and I passed the first selection. So I was like, okay, didn't expect that. Uh, I had to now go in person and do an interview.
Yeah,
And it was 12 people that had passed the first selection for 5 places.
yeah,
It was fairly competitive. And I didn't have a degree, a master's degree yet.
right.
I hadn't started working on my thesis yet.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, back to my PhD exam. That was sort of the first time, one of the first times in my life that I felt really accomplished about something.
Yeah,
I was going back and said, okay, I might not get in because I might not, but I feel like I've really done my best.
mm-hmm.
I've really, really done the best that I could. And then a couple of days later, I got accepted, which was, whoa, cool. Done one PhD application, got in.
Wow.
Cool, nice. We like that.
You
So
didn't
then I had
make any
to
more PhD applications, just one?
no,
Oh,
no.
wow.
Done well. I got in.
Yeah,
That was like one of the best programs in Italy for astrophysics and cosmology. So
yeah.
why bother? I was done. But then I had to graduate in
Uh-huh.
time for the end of October because otherwise I would have lost the scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
So this was March. I still had the end of April by then. I still had 7, 8 exams to do and my thesis. So had challenge just cut out for me. Uh, and I was starring in a play as one of the lead roles in May, because of course,
It's so
but
weird to see, like, I guess astrophysicists do like different things outside of astronomy, right? Like when I was
Yeah.
at uni, I was like in the dance club and like all different things, like not just straight space society. Um, you know.
Well, but people are well-rounded, and I think that's very important. That
Mhm.
we shouldn't try to tell people you have to give up your other things.
Yeah, I know. That's why
Clearly,
I'm
I mean,
saying this is
at
good.
that time, I was so immensely overwhelmed with the stuff I had to study that just after I've done that play, I cut on everything else because I
Hmm.
had to graduate. That was my priority, and that's okay. But no one should ever feel pushed out of their passions, or at least not all of them, out
Hmm.
of pursuing science, because it just promotes something that is very unhealthy. Um, and just as I was saying before, I was doing things that made me feel true to myself,
Hmm.
and cutting completely back on all this part of me that wants to perform and wants to share things about myself in different ways rather than science. I don't want to cut on that. Not 100%. I can cut back for some time, depending on conditions and everything else. But I don't have to cut on everything
Yeah.
just because I have to be a scientist, and that it's sort of the box I'm going to fit in, and that's it. I refuse that ideal very, very much. But in that time, I just had 6 months to graduate, and I had lots of coursework to do, lots of things to do. So even though I really wanted to do a thesis in cosmology, I found another lab that would let me do a thesis in a bit shorter time.
Oh,
So I actually did my master's project in astroparticle physics.
okay.
I was trying to look whether in data from this experiment still orbiting Earth called Pamela,
Hmm.
it's an Italian-Russian collaboration to detect antimatter coming
Hmm.
from cosmic rays. I was trying to see whether some of those nuclei could also be strangelet nuclei. So some exotic kind of atomic nuclei that also would contain strange quarks, not only up and down quarks like normally protons and neutrons do, but also a heavier sort of quark, which is a strange kind of quark.
They have like
Uh,
the funniest names, right? Like Strange, Charm.
yeah, I can let you imagine the jokes that all my friends and family did to me. It's like, well, of course it was you, Claudia. Of course it had to be a thesis on strange matter. Like, you're
Yeah.
weird, so of course you had to go with that. And then I went on to do my PhD in gravitational lensing of the CMB.
Mhm.
So gravitational lensing is this effect that a very, very heavy clump of matter makes happen when it's in front of a light source. So imagine this this chunky fist is a clump of matter, and my finger here is a light source. What happens with gravitational lensing when light wants to get from this point to the other side that disappears on the screen, is that it gets bent by the presence of matter, because this big clump of matter distorts space-time.
Mhm.
So gravitational lensing bends light when it passes around. And this is something that scientists have been studying a lot in astrophysics over the recent years, for many, many reasons. You can find exoplanets thanks to microlensing as well. You can study clusters of galaxies. You can study galaxies in themselves. You can do many, many things thanks to lensing. What I was trying to study using gravitational lensing was the effect that gravitational lensing had on the cosmic microwave background. So this picture from the very, very young universe, imagine it like it was a painting. And then in front of the painting, you have all these clumps of matter, which are the galaxies that are starting to form. So the light from your painting starts getting distorted as it goes through all these clumps of matter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the original painting is not as it was painted by the artist, but it gets slightly distorted. It's a bit like, imagine you have a painting inside a pool, right? And people are swimming at the surface. They will perturbate the pool in some way.
Mm-hmm.
They will move the water and create currents maybe. So you are at the far side of the pool underwater,
Mm-hmm.
wear glasses or a mask or something not to get water in your eyes, of course. And you see through the pool, and the painting that you see is not the original one because something has happened in between you and the painting itself.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how I would describe lensing of the cosmic microwave background. And by studying it, you can understand the properties of how the universe has evolved. Because if you had more heavy galaxies or less heavy galaxies, or more dark energy or less dark energy, the way that you create the perturbation is changing. So you take something from the very, very early universe, something that happens in the later universe, and these two effects get combined. So by studying gravitational lensing of the very early universe, you try to understand what has happened in the meantime.
Yeah.
So this is what my PhD was about, understanding the capabilities of the Euclid mission to assess gravitational lensing of the cosmic microwave background. It was a very exciting time as well because those were the years I've done my PhD. I began my PhD in 2010, and I think it was 2012, 2014 when the BICEP collaboration, there was a big controversial announcement that they had detected a very special part of the polarization of the CMB.
Yeah.
And they announced that maybe they had detected a very early effect in the universe called inflation.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been a discovery worthy of the Nobel Prize. So I remember that we were all there listening to this announcement and looking at their data and saying, I'm not sure that's right. But what do you think of that? I remember I was very skeptical.
Yeah, I think even
But
us,
I
we were
wasn't
discussing it
listening.
at the time during my PhD. And we were like,
Are you sure? It, those announcements, I find them always a lot of fun. They're so exciting. Like when the first gravitational wave event was announced, and then last year when the picture of the black hole was published,
yeah.
those times are so incredibly exciting. And I feel like even though I don't work in astronomy anymore, because then after my PhD, many other things have changed.
So after your PhD, did you ever, you did do a postdoc after your PhD?
Yeah.
So at what point did you decide I'm done with academia?
Even during my master's, I already had some times in which I doubted myself a lot.
But I think everyone has that. Like in my PhD, I had that like constantly through it.
Yeah, but I just felt it was very, very strong, and I didn't feel I was very strong in certain skills. Like I was always quite insecure about my coding skills.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm the same. I hate people looking at my code because it's always a mess. I never comment well.
there are more people with master's degrees, PhDs, than academic positions.
Yeah.
So I feel like there should be more emphasis of building skills that then you can use also outside of academia.
Yeah.
That we should be realistic with, having students in the field and not selling them this life, this glamorous academic life. Academia, as much as people try to convince you that that isn't the case, academia isn't the only place in which exciting things happen. It just is not.
Absolutely.
There are so many companies, so many other endeavors that one can do in their life that are extremely worthy and in some ways even more groundbreaking that some parts of academia are.
Yeah.
So I would, and I used to make that mistake myself. I used to think, because I didn't know any better, that for me, is at least academia was the only thing that was worth doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came to the realization during my postdoc that my feelings of not being good enough were having the best of me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even though I could have been perfectly good enough to keep on going, that it was taking a toll on me.
Yeah.
And nothing can ever be worth your happiness. My main postdoc was in China, and I spent part of that time as a visiting postdoc in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting at the stage in which I could write the paper
Yeah.
for that other thing as well. But then I had very strong health issues
Mm-hmm.
because I was doubting myself at a stage that I just couldn't bear it anymore. And also, unfortunately, I had some quite serious personal issues that led me to have to say, I have to make a choice here.
Mm-hmm.
And the choice was to quit my job.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I had to look after myself first, and
Absolutely.
best thing I could do in that moment for me was to turn things around and look for something else. But at the time, I still didn't know what the something else was going to be.
Okay.
I had no idea. I just knew that that situation, from a personal perspective, from a work perspective, from a well-being perspective, wasn't what I should have done. Like, that was definitely the hardest ever time I went through in my life so far. Uh, but as when I felt that my love for space was really born, and that's what I was going to have to do in my life. Also, in that time, even though it was very, very different and I was making a very dramatic choice, I know that even though it was extremely painful and extremely hard, as a consequence of that choice, I couldn't come back into academia.
Mm-hmm.
I know I have done the right thing. As a consequence of that, I started suffering from depression, and my mental health was very, very bad. And I'm very open about this, so I'm not ashamed to say this on
Yeah.
video. I had to do it.
Yeah.
Because being alive and trying to build meaning for myself had to happen,
Right.
even when the cost was I have to give up on what has been my dream for 10, 15 years. It takes an immense amount of self-awareness and strength to say, this is when I have to stop. Many people share uplifting quotes that you should never give up. You should always follow your dreams and do whatever it takes. And I have a bit mixed feelings when I see those things.
Yeah.
Because knowing when to stop and knowing when you have to say no, that takes an amount of courage. I had lost something so important in my life because for me that was my identity.
Yeah.
But I had to let that part go because I couldn't just make it work.
A lot of people in astronomy don't realize that it's okay to leave academia and there is a life out there. And you talked about this earlier about like there's
Of course
amazing
it's
things you can
okay.
achieve outside.
But university is okay. I mean, I am extremely critical of academia for so many reasons, because academia promotes a terribly unhealthy work-life balance. Academia is extremely taxing on early career people because it demands that you move every year, every couple years.
Yeah.
Academia has an immense amount of ingrained privilege uh, for certain demographics of people, uh, disproportionately ignores issues with mental health and other kinds of disabilities. I could sit here for a week listing all the things I don't personally like about academia, and I decided that in that moment it's not something I could have done. I've tried to say, let's see if I can go back, and it didn't happen.
Mm.
Am I sad that a part of my life didn't work out? Yes. Does that mean that there's nothing else worthy I can do with my life? No.
Mm-hmm.
And going from that stage to be able to answer no took a very long time, or I felt it took a long time for me. But the important thing is, whatever you do, I feel like as a scientist, or maybe as an astrophysicist more, I don't know, so much of my identity was invested in this is who I am. This is not only what I do, but this is who I am. At the very core of the essence of my identity was, this is who I am. And the truth is, no matter what you do, no one, nothing ever can take away what you love. Nothing, nothing. Like, forget about it.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this every day anymore. Um, I don't write code. I don't publish results. I don't go to conferences with other scientists and talk about what we have achieved. Clearly, I follow the conversations, but I'm not doing research myself anymore. Silly thing, maybe. When I moved to the UK in 2017, I was picking myself up. Like, it was my first job in an entry level position. I wasn't making much money. I moved to the. I mean, it wasn't. I wasn't new to the UK. I wasn't completely new, but I didn't know anyone or many people yet.
Yeah.
I moved with, and was post Brexit, so clearly there was a number of factors of uncertainty for what my future was going to be like as a citizen of the European Union. It wasn't entirely defined. Everything was changing. There were, one day to the other, they were saying everyone might have to go home.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't really a comforting time for me. I remember I was out in the evening doing something. I came back home and I looked up and I saw just over my house, I could see Cassiopeia.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt a feeling in me, everything was going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
That feeling, no one can ever take it away. No one. I
Yeah.
know now that no one can ever take that away from me. No matter what I do in my life, no matter where I am, what my job says, or whatever else, I will always be a scientist.
So you left academia and then you jumped into science communication. Um,
Yeah,
how did you find a passion in that? Where did that come from?
that is another thing that sort of fell on my lap. Like, I hope I made it come through that I had a very strong passion for the things I've done in my life, but some of those happened serendipitously.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been very active in pursuing opportunities, and accepting everything at the best that I could, doing what I felt could, again, make me true to myself. Always feeling like I'm doing the thing that makes me feel alive. During my PhD, my school started a school visits program. So my PhD school started a science dissemination program for kids in local schools. There was a big emphasis in that program in the fact that early career people could do it and appreciate how to build soft skills, how to build communication skills, and the fact that doing science communication is a moral responsibility for a scientist.
Yeah. Do you think it's important for an early career scientist to do this kind of stuff?
I think that people should try.
Yeah.
People should give it a go. In general, every job that is done for the purpose of advancing human knowledge or advancing technology, in general, improving life conditions, uh, and this can be also history, can be literature, can be poetry, can be law, can be anything. All these things, together with science, together with any other academic field I haven't mentioned now, have a responsibility to involve people, because the reason I believe for which we do these things is to know more, to improve society, to improve our lives from a practical perspective, or also from a thought perspective. I like saying that astronomy was maybe the first science that people ever tried to do, that human beings ever tried to do, because after you have a roof over your head and you manage to warm up a bit and you manage to eat and drink, the first thing you're going to do is look up
Yeah.
and wonder, what is that all about?
Yeah.
So, as a sense of wonder, I've always felt like I had an obligation to share that with other people. And I think that science can do amazing things for people who have to make them happen.
Yeah.
So, the most important thing is that people in science should feel that responsibility, that there should be some education in what the role of science is, in how, as scientists, we think that we should convey that information, and
Sure.
who got so far to do science, who, as in demographics,
Yeah.
and what was the environment like.
But one
And that,
trend that I've been seeing as well more recently is that a lot of early career scientists have been pushed to do the outreach, and in particular, like the minority, the females, those like who are like black and other ethnic minorities have been pushed to do more of these outreach things just because they want to have like the kind of checkbox to say.
and that's another major issue. I think that as scientists, collectively, we should recognize that we have responsibility. I think that there are people that are not cut for it,
Yeah.
and therefore don't necessarily have to be sort of the public face.
Like you might not think that you can do public engagement, but when I was at the University of Birmingham, I set up like a really nice outreach group there, and we had like one guy who was like, I don't want my face on anything, and he ended up just doing the programming of video games and other sorts of little things, and he really enjoyed it, and he was just like, I before this I didn't realize that you could do public engagement without having to put yourself out there.
Exactly, that's a great point. That's something really important to remember, that it doesn't have to be, I'm going to a school, and spending a
Yeah.
morning with kids asking me every sort of question. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. It can be many other things. But also, the other point that you were raising is entirely right, and there are a number of issues in how public engagement, in my opinion, is viewed by universities. because scientists, especially students, shouldn't be expected to do it for free, shouldn't be expected to do it without support and training, shouldn't be expected to just go on and be the public face for the institute because it's a proper job. So people should be supported, and especially it should never be treated as a photo op. It should never ever be, and personally I consider it despicable behavior to get your 3, 4 excellent uh, minority students in your program to go out and be your ambassadors so that you can claim that you're so inclusive, because then most likely you're asking them to do that work for free, and that's not okay. And also, it's great that people now are showcasing people from underrepresented backgrounds more, because I think that's very important. We are aware of how vital role models are, so we need to attract more people from diverse backgrounds and make them feel like science is for them. But then we have to change the environment, and an environment that tells you, I want you to make me look nice, I want you to do all this extra labor for free, and go and encourage, young Black students, young Latin students, or this can be applied to many different things. And then once they get in there, they find exactly the same oppression. That's not going to help, because it's not only about the people that you attract, it's about not sugarcoating it. I remember there was a conversation happening on social media a couple of weeks ago. Should we discuss sexism in academia? Should we discuss all the issues that happened that are connected with the work environment that is created right now in academia, or will we scare off students? Well, personally, I'm going to be very provocative here. I believe that if young, talented students from certain demographic backgrounds don't sign up for academia out of knowing how bad academia could be for them, academia doesn't deserve them. Academia deserves to sit with the discomfort of being a mostly white, heterosexual, male, able-bodied, middle-class environment. Needs to sit with that discomfort, to know that it built itself on colonialistic, patriarchal values, and say, where can I change? And when academia sees that everyone is shunning them for being so terribly not diverse, that it's time for academia to change. It's not time anymore to raise aspirations. It is time for academia to become attractive, to really fix its own problems. Because I want everyone to feel like they can pursue a career in science if they want to. But I'm not going to tell them, oh, by the way, everything is fun and games and unicorns here. No, I'm going to be very honest with them and say, be open about my own challenges, be open about the situation, how are things for people of color, for people that identify as women, for people that identify as different genders or agender, for people that identify as not being attracted to the opposite gender, for people that are disabled, for everyone. I will be honest about those challenges. I won't shy away, because we have to be honest, because otherwise what we do is we attract a fantastic pool of amazingly talented people from all walks of life, and they're going to swim in a pool of sharks, and I would never forgive myself for that. because it means I would be outright lying to them. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I do believe that for me, science communication clearly was something fantastic.
Yeah.
And it can be something fantastic.
Yeah.
So if people want to try, that's something that should be seen as valid, not something that takes from the time you're spending doing research, but part of your overall job of being a scientist. And part of my job, part of my social responsibility as a scientist, is also to take those results out there. It should be seen as part of responsibility of being a scientist, and so it should be properly remunerated, it should be properly recognized,
Absolutely.
training received, and also not tokenizing at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to finish off, then, if you've got any advice for anyone watching who wants to go down a road similar to you, go into Sci-Comm, or even just try out some Sci-Comm, like, what advice
Well,
would you give them?
Something I would definitely try to do is I would look up, depending on the country, of course, some surveys about public perception of science. Some if people are based in the European Union or in the Europe area, Eurobarometer is quite good for this. Is an interesting report that people should definitely take a look at. A very interesting piece of research in education research is called Aspires, and which is run by researchers at University College London. And it's about what are the aspirations of young people regarding science. And this ties in with what I was saying earlier about, who wants to become a scientist and why. And I think it can be very enlightening to read how young people perceive science. Clearly, this report is done in the UK, so it won't translate perfectly to different countries, but I think it gives a lot of food for thought. There is something called Letters to a Pre-Scientist, in which you get paired up with a kid, and you become pen pals. You write letters to each other, and you can tell them about your experience as a scientist. And then you get letters back from the kids, which are very cute. So that's something I definitely advise looking into. I'll send you the website for this as well. Something else I will mention is Skype a Scientist, which is a bit
me.
like what we're doing.
Yes.
Skype Maggie. So if you sign up for Skype a Scientist, you can be connected with schools or people around the world. They want to know a bit more about your field of research. So you start asking yourself, how do I explain these things? Because something that my feeling people, young students or PhD students or early career researchers ask themselves is, my research is too hard. How do I talk about it to people that maybe don't even have their higher education, or kids, 5-year-old kids? How do I talk about galaxies to a 5-year-old?
And you get better each time you do it as well, right?
Oh, definitely. Well,
it's a good skill
science,
to gain.
You're not born knowing how to do sciences. At least I wasn't born knowing how to do science. I had to learn. I had to read books. I had to practice. I had to ask people that knew more. And if you want to try your hand, you can do it. A number of countries participate to FameLab, which is about communicating your science in 3 minutes. Or there are other things on the same line. 3-minute thesis is one that comes to mind. So you should, if you want to try, you should Google these opportunities, because now there's more and more awareness of it. For me, it was a bit different, because even when I did FameLab myself in Italy, it was in 2014, and FameLab there was fairly new. So I came from a country in which these things were not still as active.
Yeah.
But I was very lucky because my PhD school did offer some opportunity for me to learn. But then once I found that this was something I really, like this is really cool. I spent the morning with kids and I loved it and we spoke about science. Then you can start doing it more. So I looked out for other things and I kept learning, I kept practicing, kept doing it more and more and more. And then it became my job.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience as a science communicator, I've worked already in different countries because not my it's not only my career as a scientist that has been international, but also my career as a science communicator has been because it started out in Italy when I was in this program with doing school visits and then doing Fame Lab. I was on the radio during my PhD to talk about my science communication experience. Then I when I moved after I finished my postdoc, I spent some time in Italy again, and of being a scientific consultant for an astronomy company.
Mm-hmm.
Then I worked for the United Nations, doing science communication about space. Then I moved to the UK, and since I've moved here, I worked in Cambridge. I worked in Edinburgh. I worked in Cardiff. So I took every opportunity that I could in order to grow. I worked for universities, I've worked for learned societies, I've worked for a science museum, I worked for many different places because I wanted to learn more. I wanted to challenge myself. And I feel like in anything that you do, this is just the most important skill to have. That you decide that you never want to be set in your ways.
Yeah.
You want to think out the box, take a step out of your comfort zone when you're ready to do so, and say, okay, today I'm going to try something else because I want to be more well rounded. I want to be a better person. I want to do something more that makes my work better. In my case, I try to do things that make me able to help more people, that make me leave my mindset of my life experience the way it's been so far and put myself in someone else's shoes. This is how I try to do it. And everyone has their own way, depending on their personality, and that's entirely fine. But for me, I would never be able to stop myself from saying, okay, that's it. I know everything now. World leading expert means I don't have to learn anymore. I don't, if I ever say that, send me a very, very bad email.
Okay, we'll remember that.
Call me out because I never ever want to be that person that says, I'm done, I've learned everything I could. Because there's so much more to learn out there.
I think that's for everyone. Yeah, for everyone. Yeah. There is so much out there that you can learn. You should never stop learning, right?
If I'm alive by the time I get there, I know I could be 90, I could be 120 years old, I don't care. I will be there to say, okay, what are we going to do next?
Yeah.
Because this is the end. I'm not stopping now. It means now that things are more equal, we can do something to make them even better.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really good note to finish on. So thank you so much for joining me on this chat. I think the viewers are going to love this because it's a bit different from what I usually have on my channel. So Claudia is on Twitter. I will link her account down below. I don't know what else you're on, but I'm sure I can grab it off you.
I'm on Instagram, but I have to say I'm not very active on there because I just don't feel good enough with pictures, like sharing pictures is not my forte. But people can, if people want, of course, can follow my rants on Twitter. I'm very ranty there. So
will you ever have a YouTube for continuations of your like singing and other skits? That would be nice to see.
I really think sometimes I should try to have a YouTube. I was thinking like over the past few weeks, I was toying in my head with the idea of a podcast. Actually,
Yeah, that might
what
be
what
nice.
would you sign up?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So
Maybe. Okay.
so if you get it up before I launch this, the link would be down below as well. Thank you all for watching. Everything we've talked about, I'm linking down below as well. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, so we can improve in the future. And in the meanwhile, please don't forget to leave me a like, share, and subscribe.